Hi everyone, welcome to this lecture. So in this lecture, we will learn about the basic concept of logistic regression, and we will also learn what are our requirements from the logistic regression or what we want logistic regression to do. So basically, logistic regression is used to perform classification, and classification is different from regression. So here is the comparison of regression and classification. So we can see that both are supervised machine learning algorithm. That is, we need labels in order to perform regression as well as classification. So the labels are present in both regression and classification. In regression, we perform the predictions of labels or target variables, and also in classification, we do the predictions of labels or target variables. Now here comes the big difference. In regression, the target variables are continuous. On the other hand, in classification, the target variables are discrete. Here are the example of few continuous target variables like a salaries or the housing price. On the other hand, we have the example for the classification. Suppose we have to classify between a disease, that is a person has a disease or no, or we have to classify between different animals. So in that case, in regression, the target variable is continuous, and in classification, the target variable is discrete. So this is the big difference between the regression and classification, although both are supervised machine learning algorithm. So this is the example of a continuous target variable, and we can see that this is a continuous value, and we can see after the decimal, this value continues. So if we have to predict values like this, we need regression. On the other hand, the categories or the target variables in classifications are discrete, like yes or no. That is whether the patient has a disease or no. On the other hand, whether the animal is a cat or dog. So if our categories or target variables are discrete, basically then we are going to perform a classification. And if the target variables are continuous, then we will do regression. So both involve the prediction. In one case, the prediction is about the continuous variable. On the other hand, the prediction is about the discrete variable. So basically, what is logistic regression? So a logistic regression, also known as binary logistic regression, has logical target variables or labels. So basically, initially logistic regression was designed to perform the binary classification. When we say binary classification, it means it has two categories like yes or no, pass or fail, male and female. And we know that when we give these categories as an input to our machine, we have to transform them into integers. When we will transform them into the integers, we get 1, 0, that is 1 for yes and 0 for no. And similarly, we will get 1 or 0 for these and 1 or 0 for these categories as well. So basically 1, 0 are the binary numbers, or they are called the logical numbers. So in logistic regression, the word logistic comes from the word logical. Basically, when we perform logistic regression, we have the target variables that are logical, that is 0 and 1. So initially, logistic regression was designed to perform the binary classification, but now we can also perform the classification with more than two categories with the help of logistic regression. So basically, what logistic regression is doing? So logistic regression is doing classification. Now, the important concept is that it is a probabilistic classifier. Now, what does it mean? Basically, logistic regression returns the probabilities of class membership, and finally, we use a threshold to implement classification. Now, this is the example, and we have from 0 to 7, we have 8 data sample. Now, what logistic regression will return about these data samples? Suppose we have two classes in which we have to classify this 0 sample or the first sample. So logistic regression will return us the probability of the classes. So logistic regression is telling us that this first sample has 96.9% chance that it belongs to class 1, and it has only 3% chance that it belongs to class 0. Since the probability with class 1 is high, therefore the predicted class is 1. Here again, about the second sample, logistic regression is saying that around 45% it is likely belong to class 0, and around 55% it is likely to belong to class 1. In that case, the probability of sample 1 with class 1 is high, therefore the predicted class is 1. So in this way, logistic regression will tell us about the probability of each sample with respect to classes. So we have two classes and we have here samples. So if I see here, if I see the sample number 5, whose index is 4, we can see that this sample has around 58% chance that it belongs to class 0 and 42% chance that it belongs to class 1. So logistic regression is providing us the probability of this sample. So since the probability with class 0 is high as compared to probability of class 1, therefore the predicted class is 0. So what we do is that logistic regression is providing us the probabilities, and then we set a threshold. Now here the threshold is 0.5. If any of the probability is greater than 0.5, it means our data sample belongs to that class. So here we can see that this probability is greater than 0.5 and this is a probability with class 1. So our predicted class is 5 because this is greater than our threshold. So if anything is greater than 0.5, it will belong to class 1. This is our threshold. And if anything is less than 0.5, it belongs to class 0. Now here we can also see that this is the probability which is greater than 0.5 and this probability belongs to class 1. Therefore, this sample belongs to the first class, that is class 1. Similarly, if we see the last sample, so for the last sample, which is our 8th sample, the probability with class 0 is greater than 0.5 or it has high probability. On the other hand, the probability with class 1 is less than 0.5. So based on our threshold, we have decided that this last sample belongs to class 0. So this is the way in which probabilistic classifier like logistic regression works. And based on the probabilities with respect to classes, we have to predict the class. So I hope you understood this lecture. I hope you understood the concept of a logistic regression, that it is used to perform the classification, but while performing the classification, it returns the probability of the class membership. Then we set a threshold, and based on the threshold, we predict the class. So I hope you understood this lecture. Thanks for listening, and I will see you in the next lecture.